Siyabonga kwapheka uZulu. Ivukuzane evukuza ubusuku nemini. Iyabona ngumama osebandebeleni uphejana odlabakayise. Phuma siqiwini. Kade bekuvalele ungalonde ngakhabela hayi ngangezawuyise. Hebo siqhutswana sebethi bakwalula ndaba kuphelele inqulwini eyakhinte.
Well, and now we ask the question, what is the role and relevance of African monarchs in countries which are democratically governed? To speak to us about this is Professor Pearl Sithole, who's a social anthropologist from the University of the Free State. Prof, good evening and welcome to the show. How would you answer that question?
Good evening, Aldrin. We are living in a situation where we are combining changing cultures that came from a different trajectory, but they've always been changing. So if you look at traditional leadership anywhere in the world, it is a form of governance that centralizes culture and symbolism and the softer issues of life. In other words, it has a stronger bond and relationship with people and the nature of how they think about life, but that has always been changing. It does not matter where, and it has its own forms of negotiation, which you can call their form of democracy as well. So this juxtaposition of democracy and tradition is not quite a fair kind of juxtaposition. However, because there is admittance that we have core influences, we live with it. We live with the pretense that actually there are two systems in any country.
Yeah, actually earlier on I was in conversation with Shalom Bata from the University of Zululand, and she argues that modernity doesn't really pose a threat to monarchs, but rather forces evolution.
True. If you look at all of the traditional houses in Africa, whether they fall under a patrilineal system, which is what we have in South Africa, or they fall under the matrilineal system, most of them have actually been able to adapt to issues of modernity. Some of them are actually professionals that leave their stools, their reign under prime ministers, and actually engage fully with a professional life, and then come back to their own positions and guide their position. So different countries and different monarchs have a different way of managing current times and continuing with that kind of relationship with a people in a manner that is softer, that is generating their kind of life.
Yeah. So then what would you say to the definition of citizenship versus the definition of being a subject? Because it almost sounds as though that these are also competing identities.
It is true that there is that kind of, let's put it this way, Alton. There are people who religiously follow this idea, which is an idea that comes from people like Fukuyama in the West, that there has been a speedy evolution in the West, and we are living in the times of the end of history and the last man, which is signified by Western democracy. Mm-hmm. And those people strongly believe that there is only one kind of democracy, and it is symbolized by citizenship, and that every other system is under subjectivity of authority. Whereas in fact, actually the reality is so different when you look at how people engage with both systems quite happily.
Prof, just quickly in conclusion, what we've also noted is that once a monarch has passed on, there's always a dispute around the succession, and we've seen this with the Nhlapo Commission report as well. But seemingly still it seems as though that the democratic dispensation is the one that's being followed in terms of how to solve those disputes, even going all the way up to courts.
Well, there are institutions, some of them actually supported by government, that do a lot of background research in these things, and they actually delve into finding out the principles of succession and try to resolve it from some kind of basis. So every unit, every kingdom has its own ways, and any court, even if there is a dispute, has to find out from the relevant practitioners and experts how that is to be resolved.
Thank you so much for that. That is Professor Pearl Sithole, who's a social anthropologist at the University of the Free